Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by Bird Campbell, PA. Bird Campbell means business. Hello and welcome to episode 91 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Remember, it's Sunday, the 5th of November, 2017. Guys, the season's right around the corner. It's time to do a Duke basketball season preview, the third one we've done for this show. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. Before we dive right into that, I'll introduce everybody. I am Sam Klein. I'm your host this week. I am joined by Donald Wine in Washington, D.C.
Hey guys, actually, in true fashion, I am not in Washington, D.C. this weekend. I am in Nashville, Tennessee, eating some hot chicken.
My apologies.
No, it's all good. It's all good. You know me. I'm on the road a lot, but it's good to be here in Nashville, and it's good. We're ready for basketball season to start. I'm excited.
Dude, amazing. And in Atlanta, Jason Evans.
Hey, so I'm in Atlanta. Can I tell a quick Nashville story, just really fast?
Absolutely.
So when I was dating my wife, this is 1988, before you guys were even born. I'm dating my wife. We're in Atlanta.
I'm older than that.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet.
So I'm dating my wife. She's in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta. She was visiting Atlanta for the summer, and she wanted to go to Nashville. Just because she hadn't really been to the South. So one weekend we drove from Atlanta to Nashville. It's not a very long drive. It's like a 4-hour drive. It's really easy. And we had made reservations at a very nice Italian restaurant in Nashville that was fairly close to our hotel. And our reservation was for 7 o'clock, which is a perfectly reasonable time to have a reservation for a hotel. For a restaurant. So we arrive and we got there. It was like 6:30, 6:45 maybe. It was early, but not super early. There weren't a ton of people in the place. And when I checked in with the maitre d', I said, hey, I know it's a little bit early. We're going to have a drink at the bar. You can come get us in just a little bit. And he said, okay, no problem, sir. So we go to the bar and we have our drink. And we're sitting there. We're kind of waiting for the maitre d' to come over and take us to our table. And so 6:45 becomes 7, which is when our reservation was supposed to happen, becomes 7:15. It gets to be 7:30, and we're just still sitting here waiting. And I'm like, what is up with this guy? Why is he not? And other people have come in after us, and they've been seated. I'm like, why are we not being seated? So I go up to the maitre d' and I go, look, I don't want to be mean or anything, but why are you not seating us? And he looks at me for a second and he goes, you're from Atlanta, aren't you? Now, that was a weird question to get. I'm like, yes, as a matter of fact, we are. He said, sir, we're on Central Time Zone. You came from the Eastern Time Zone. It's not your reservation time yet. Your reservation isn't for another 30 minutes.
Good work. Especially pertinent story today because it was daylight savings last night.
Exactly. So I slinked back to the bar and I said to my girlfriend at the time, my wife, and I said, we'll be seated really soon. It's way, when I said it was early, we were way early. And we laughed about that. So that's my amusing Nashville story.
I like it. So funny personal stories aside, do you guys want to talk briefly about Duke's win over Bowie State this past weekend?
Yes.
Should we get into that? Sure. So Duke beat Bowie State 116-53. It was basically not close from the very tip. Duke overmatched Bowie State basically in every way. The one notable thing about this game, and I'll let you guys kind of dig deeper into it. But for if you didn't get a chance to watch it, the interesting thing was that a number of Duke's freshmen, specifically Trayvon Duval, Jordan Goldwire, and Alex O'Connell, were suspended for this game. The report that we got during the game on air and also after the game was that it was some combination of missing classes or academic reasons, not issues that sound like they're going to be ongoing for those guys. But Duke was really thin in the guard rotation, and it showed because Duke had to play a lot of big guys in places where maybe they wouldn't before. And I we'll come back to this when we do the grand season preview about how much big man rotation we're going to see this year. So it was, on the one hand, it was an interesting game because we did get to see a lot deeper onto the bench between those guys being suspended and also just the game being a blowout so quickly. But we have to be careful about how it clouds our judgment of the way this team is going to play going forward. So I'll start with Jason. What did you take away from this Bowie State game that you think is actually useful kind of going forward into the regular season?
Am I allowed to say nothing? No, nothing is not my answer. But I mean, Bowie State is not good compared to Duke. They are no Northwest Missouri State. Northwest Missouri State, of course, we played a week ago, is the best team in Division II, and I actually think Northwest Missouri State could compete with a number of Division I teams, even some sort of kind of decent Division I teams. Bowie State, no, they were barely 500 last year in Division II, and they're supposed to be a little bit better this year. They're considered one of the contenders for their conference. Like, they're picked, I think, second in their conference, so they aren't an awful team, but that's a Division II team. Look, the fact that Duke didn't have those three guards who make up a significant portion of our perimeter rotation meant that we played really, really big, and Bowie State is not big. There were a number of moments in this game where Duke had four guys on the floor together who all four of them, well, we had five guys, but four of our five guys on the floor were taller than anyone on the Bowie State team. I mean, to say we controlled the boards, that we controlled everything inside, to say that we were more physical and better athletes, these are all givens against someone like Bowie State. But let's talk about a few things that did matter a little bit. And the first one I'll mention is Gary Trent Jr. decided that he was going to start shooting from a foot or two further back. So rather than taking long 2-pointers, he started taking 3-pointers. And that was a really good thing because he hit a lot of them. He had a fabulous game from the perimeter, 5 of 9 from 3-point range. His stroke looks so smooth. It's so beautiful. The way he squares his shoulders and his release and the such, he's going to be a really good scorer for Duke. And he's showing that he can absolutely hit the 3-pointer with ease. And that's a big deal for Duke. I want to talk about Grayson Allen for a second. To say that Grayson Allen is spectacular sort of doesn't do it justice. Whether he was in the lane, whether he was firing from deep, whether he was running the show for the team, he looks absolutely like his sophomore self that was arguably the best player in the country. And, everyone likes to talk about, with freshmen especially, how the game's moving too fast for them. With Grayson Allen, it looks like the game is moving in slow motion. I mean, he is seeing everything 3 steps before it happens. The football pass he made to Bagley, I forget who it was, came down with a rebound, gave the ball to Grayson, and Grayson turned around and immediately reared back like a quarterback and threw a football pass length of the court to Marvin Bagley that Bagley laid in beautifully. And by the way, I mean, Bagley moves up the floor so gracefully. But, I mean, for Grayson Allen, he was in complete control this game. He had to play a lot of point guard because Trayvon Duval wasn't around. And so, hey, rather than scoring a lot, although Grayson scored 21 points, he had 11 assists. He played a great game. And then let me really quickly get to the big man. Javin DeLaurier, was again Duke's energy guy. Not off the bench. He started this game, but he picked up some fouls. And so we didn't get to see quite as much of DeLaurier as I would have liked. But I think that allowed Marquise Bolden to really play more minutes than he would have ordinarily gotten. And I thought Bolden looked as assertive and confident as he has all year. And that is what he needs. For Bolden, the light bulb that must come on is the light bulb that says, I am confident in what I'm doing. I'm going to be assertive on the floor. And I mean, Bolden absolutely looked fabulous. He had he had a couple really nice passes. And by the way, God, our big to big passing, our passing between our big men, especially, high post, low post, and across the lane and things like that, was incredible. That was probably the biggest takeaway from this game, was the quality of the passing, especially among the big guys. And it's scary to think how much better these guys are going to get at playing together. They're this good after only playing together for like less than a month. It is amazing. Go ahead.
I was going to say, although to be fair, Marquise Bolden was generally being guarded by guys who were 6 to 8 inches shorter than he is, and also a lot lighter. So
yes,
hesitate always to heap the praise. But yeah, but the passing, like if he's confident passing, he's confident passing, right?
Yes, and but he and Carter took really nice hook shots in the lane, and the moves that they made in the lane, yes, they were playing against guys who were smaller and not as physical as them, but they were, to some extent, saw them both making moves that I think will be successful against guys who are even bigger. So it was great, but I mean, look, this game was 28-3 at one point. Think about that score, 28-3.
There was a period where I thought we were just going to shut them out, and that was it was over quickly. Donald, tell me about your reaction to this game.
Well, Jason took a couple of them away from me. The one thing I wanted to talk about, first of all, was Marquise Bolden, and the confidence that this game gave him is really going to be something that we need down the road. You got to have, last year he didn't play with that confidence. He didn't play like he belonged on the court. And there was times during this game where he was absolutely 100% belonging on the court and played with the confidence that we need to see him play with, especially when you mix in with the other guys. That's going to be crucial going forward. I also like the energy that we had on defense. Obviously we talk about how Bowie State was a little bit, they're way overmatched and very undersized. But to grab 58 rebounds, that means that we were energetic on the defensive end. We got five steals, 10 blocks. Was it 8 steals or 5 steals? Either way, we were very energetic on the defensive end. That is what, honestly, when I first started watching Duke basketball, that's how we fed. That's the momentum. That's how we feed off of the crowd. Getting a defensive stop or a turnover or a steal or a block and going on the other end and converting into points, that's what breaks people's momentum. That's what breaks the psyche of the other team, and that's what puts Duke on top. And I think that's what we saw a lot of this game. That's what I wanted to see is translate into the regular season.
Yeah, that's a great point. The only thing I wanted to add, and it was a comment on the rotation. I think that, like I said at the top, we don't want to read too much into the rotation that we saw this weekend because so many of the guards were out, and in particular Trayvon Duval, who's going to play 30-plus minutes a game for this team this year. But so just looking at the rest of the rotation, I did think it was interesting that Justin Robinson appears to be ahead of Antonio Vrankovic for kind of that fifth big man spot, because I think going into the season, maybe a few months ago, we would have said that Robinson was probably still buried on the bench and there was like no way he was coming into games. And now it appears he has a little bit more trust from the coaching staff, and it's shown because he's made a couple of plays in those limited minutes that he's had in exhibition. So I'm curious to see if friend of the podcast, Justin Robinson, can carve out perhaps a small role on this team going forward.
Well, see, so the one thing I'd say about and I took a note about that. I was like, Justin Robinson's the second man off the bench. Oh my God, this is probably the first time in his career that he's played in the first 5 minutes of a game. and good for him. Look, he's clearly a kid who's been working at his game a lot. And I thought, look, he came in, he blocked shots, he made some good passes. He's sort of Javin DeLaurier light, because he is another energy guy coming off the bench. And I love that role for him. I just wonder, I think that part of why you may have seen him so early was Duke. We needed guys who could play even a little tiny bit on the perimeter. When Justin Robinson came in, he was playing shooting guard for Duke. And he's not that. He's going to be if he ever plays for Duke, I think it's going to be as a power forward probably, because he's reasonably tall and he doesn't really have shooting guard kind of skills, but he's got more shooting guard skills than Antonio Vrankovic does.
Sure.
So I sort of think that's why he came in. Are we about? Could we really be about to wrap up the conversation about the exhibition and have not talked about what Wendell Carter did in this game? Because
Jason, you're the resident Wendell Carter expert and giant fan. So why don't you tell us?
So how about 23 points, 14 rebounds, 8 of them offensive, 3 assists, a block shot, and oh yeah, he hit 11 out of 13 field goals. And so he missed his only 3-pointer. And I think, if my memory is correct, the only other field goal he missed was one where it looked to me like he kind of threw it up there so that because he was in position to get the rebound. And so he would put himself in better position by missing the shot and grabbing the rebound than he would by actually taking the shot. So I don't think he actually missed a shot that he intended to make other than the 3-pointer. That's a pretty darn. Go ahead.
You're saying he had a terrible game. Is what I'm hearing.
He was amazing. He was amazing.
I think that my general takeaway from the exhibition season has been, like wow factors for all the freshmen, for who, the ones who we expect to play, and then even some of the ones we don't. Just how comfortable a lot of them seem, and I think this has been kind of a general trend the last few years that the freshmen every year, it seems, come in more and more ready to play at this level and at the Division I speed. And Carter has been no exception to that.
Hey, and let me ask you guys really quickly, I'd love to know your impression of this. So last year we had this incredibly highly touted freshman class, just like we do this year. Now, admittedly, Harry Giles was hurt. And look, early on, I think every single other one of them got hurt, but do you feel the same way I do, that the current freshmen really look a lot better than the freshmen did last year at this point?
Yeah, I think that relative to last year, and I would challenge anybody to go back and listen to our previous episodes. I feel like going into last year, the optimism was like unbridled and like out of control for the freshman class. I think based a lot on Harry Giles's earlier high school career. And it's amazing, I think, that this year, that if anything, the excitement isn't as high for a group that has, top 3 pick Marvin Bagley and, all around appearingly great guy Wendell Carter and eventual, superstar shooter Gary Trent and all these guys. It's kind of surprising that it's not as highly touted or not as kind of hyped up as it was last year. And that's also considering that Duke is number 1 in a number of the preseason rankings, which I don't think maybe reflects how good they are now, but perhaps how they're going to be by the time the season ends.
Well, there's also the fact that, and I'm not saying this is why it's spread or anything. It could be where we take the lessons we learned from last year and apply them to this year, and that's why there's not as much hype surrounding this group of freshmen in relative to last year's, because I think a lot of people probably looked at last year and they said, 40, this team's going all the way, this team's going to be unstoppable, and they were very stoppable during the season. We found that out very quickly that, we felt to the injury bug, we felt to a lot of different issues. And I think this time around, people are probably saying, this team is just as good, if not better, than last year, but we still have to reserve some judgment until the regular season starts. And I think that is where you can kind of, we're going to have a great test in a week against Michigan State, who's ranked number 2 in the preseason polls. So I think that's going to be where people will say, okay, this team may be for real. And I think that is where, we're probably holding back until that point.
On that note, and on the note of getting ready for the season and talking about big stat numbers and all that kind of stuff wrapped up together, we're going to start our 3rd annual preseason prediction guessing game that we initiated a couple years ago. We've gotten a little bit more organized for it each year. So So we're all ready to go here. I will say that before we get into it, just like a programming note, we're not going to do the detailed previews of Elon and Utah Valley, who are Duke's two opponents for this week. We're saving them for another episode we're going to do this week because we wanted to split this up a little bit. And we also have, I know that Jason teased this on the forum. We have an interview coming with a ACC coach that will also show up in that episode later this week. So we're actually going to be doing 2 episodes this week because just there's a lot to talk about. And with that, are you guys ready to play our annual stats prediction games?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right.
Wait. It is very important that you remind the folks who won last year.
Jason, I think, won the game last year.
Oh, I don't think I know.
Jason won the game last year. But
why are you bringing up old stuff, Jason? Like that was a full year ago.
We got to look ahead. Today is today. Yesterday was yesterday. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a number of categories and questions that we have prepared ahead of time. We know what we're all going to answer. We don't know what the others are going to answer. So we're going to be going through these and kind of taking down notes. Hopefully we don't overlap too much because it's more fun when we don't. But with that, I'm going to start with our first category, which is who's going to score the most points for Duke this season. Donald?
I have Grayson Allen.
And Jason?
I mean, Grayson Allen, and it won't be close.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Unfortunately, we're not going to disagree on this, and it makes sense, right? He's the returning 4-year superstar who scores a lot of points anyway. So, all right, maybe the second category will be more interesting. Most rebounds on the team, Jason.
Again, it won't be close. Wendell Carter.
Donald.
I think it will be close, but I do also think it'll be Wendell Carter.
Interesting. All right, I'm going with Marvin Bagley. I actually had Carter written down here, and then I changed it right before we started. So give me Marvin Bagley, even though I'm sure I'm going to end up being wrong on this. All right, third category, blocked shots. I'm going to go first this time. I am going with Wendell Carter for most blocked shots. Donald.
So this one was the one that, of all the categories that we're going through, I had the most trouble coming up with a decision. In the end, I also went with Wendell Carter, but I don't feel confident about that pick because I think a lot of guys on this team can block some shots, and I reserve the right to be wrong in this category.
Jason, are you gonna take Bagley or Bolden or Delorier?
I'm taking Bagley. I agree with Donald. This was a really tough one. At one point, I wrote down Carter. At one point, I wrote down Bagley. At one point, I wrote down Bolden. And at one point, I wrote down Delorier. But I'm going with Bagley. But I will say this: if we were doing blocks per minute played, it'd be Javin Delorier, and it wouldn't be close.
And that's an interesting thing, and we're going to get to that in a few categories from now when we talk about the big man rotation. I agree with you and had the same kind of thought process that if Delorier somehow earns 25 minutes a game, this could be a more interesting category. But I'm also going with Carter. Let's move to assists. This one shouldn't be especially controversial, Jason.
Trevon Duval.
And Donald.
Duval.
Yeah, he's playing point guard, right? So unless he keeps having academic troubles, can't see how this goes any other way. Steals. This one could be more interesting because we have a couple of guards in the rotation who all have. I think they all have pretty good defensive chops. But Donald, who do you think's getting the most steals this year for Duke?
For this one, I was deciding between Trayvon Duval and Gary Trent Jr. and Grayson Allen because Grayson Allen has been, one of our, best stealers the last few years. In the end, I think in a mild upset, I'm going to go with Duval, only because I think this one will be the closest of the categories. I think those three will be separated by a few steals, and I think in the end it'll be Duval.
Jason?
I also went with Duval, but I agree that really could be Trent. Trent has a real shot here. I don't think Allen has much. Grayson Allen only averaged 0.8 steals per game last year. I think Duval will take it, but I think it could be really close with Gary Trent.
Yeah, I have Duval written down. I'm tempted to go take Trent just to make this more interesting, but let's keep going and see how the rest of this plays out. All right, our sixth category is highest field goal percentage, and we're saying that you have to have at least one field goal attempt per game. So if Duke plays 35 games this year, you have to have at least had 35 field goal attempts. So I'm going to take Marvin Bagley in this category. Jason, who do you think?
Wendell Carter.
And Donald.
Bagley.
Okay, interesting.
Y'all are crazy.
All right, that's fine.
But the guy just went 11 for 13 in the most
against a totally overmatched team.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. The only way, I'm going to say this. You ready for bold prediction? The only way Wendell Carter doesn't win this is if there's some sort of weird, freaky thing where Vrankovic, barely qualifies or something like that. Like, I wish it wasn't one attempt per game. I wish it was more like 2 or 3 attempts per game, and then I wouldn't have to worry about, Vrankovic or Justin Robinson or Jack White.
Listen, we can change. Do you want me to call this 1.5 attempts per game?
Call it 2.
Call it 2. All right, we're changing the rules of the game.
It doesn't change it. I'm just saying unless it's some
just
weird
to protect against it.
Yeah,
I understand. So we're going to do the same thing on the next category, our seventh category, which is highest 3-point percentage. I set it as at minimum half of an attempt per game. So Duke plays 35 games. You're going to have 17 and a half 3-point attempts, if that makes sense. So I'm taking Grayson Allen in this category. Donald, who do you have for 3-point percentage?
I'm going to go with Gary Trent.
I was hoping that someone would, because I think that those are the two that it's down to, right? Jason, what do you think?
I also went with Grayson Allen. I think the basket looks really, really big to him right now. Hey, before we go on to your next ones, because we're sort of done with the players, we're sort of getting into team things. Seeing as we picked the same for so many of these, can I ad-lib one? Can we ask second most points per game or second most points scored?
Yeah, let's do that.
All went Grayson Allen. I think second most could be interesting.
Okay. Why don't you lead us off then?
So I'll say second most points is going to be Gary Trent.
Okay.
All right, Donald.
I'm going to go Bagley.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So for the sake of the fun of the game, I'm going to take Wendell Carter.
Nice. It could be all three, any one of those three guys. I mean,
yeah, I think those guys are all fair picks, and honestly, I could see it happening for Duval too, although I think it's a lot less likely than any of those guys.
So you guys' picks are locked in, right? You're locked in.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'm going to win that category because Gary Trent is going to get more opportunities than those other guys because Duke doesn't have as many guys in the perimeter as they have guys inside. Ha ha!
We'll see. It's easier for those guys to score. They get the ball closer to the basket.
That's a good point, but Gary Trent's shots count for more when they're behind the 3-point line.
That is true. All right, so that does it for the for the individual stats categories. We're going to now move to some about the team in general. So the first one here is total number of wins, and I'll let Donald start on total wins.
Well, obviously, since we are going to win the national championship this year, bold prediction, I'm going with 37 wins.
That's a big number.
No, that's the same number I have. Oh.
Perfect. All right, great. I'm going to continue my pessimism streak, and I'm going to go with 34.
34.
Yeah, because I think that just like last year, even with health, this team's going to get caught a couple times just being inexperienced. And that's just how it is. So
I agree with you, but we're going to go 37-3.
Okay, that's fine. The next category, which is one I don't think we had done before, is total number of true road wins, and I'm adding the caveat that you can count BS NCAA tournament games, like if we have to play South Carolina in Greenville or something like that.
So before we do this, I have to clarify something.
Go ahead and clarify the ones that are on the schedule.
Yeah. So first of all, Portland State in Portland, of course, counts as a true road game, right?
Absolutely.
Correct.
Same with St. John's in Madison Square Garden.
Yep. That is a St. John's game.
But Michigan State in where we play them, like
It's
United
in Chicago. That one does not count.
That's not a road game, right?
No.
Okay. All right. That's all I needed to know.
Okay. And we are playing at Indiana. It is the only prominent non-conference games outside of the ones that you mentioned, and then all the ones in the ACC, of course.
Yeah. So it's a total, unless there is a bullshit NCAA tournament situation again. It should be 12 total games.
Yeah, that looks right. So
13 total true road games.
13 or 12?
13. How do you have 13? It's 12.
Because I have, we have 9, 10. It was 9 in the ACC.
Yeah.
St. John's, Portland State, Indiana, and who am I missing? Oh, maybe it's 12. 9 plus 3. Yeah.
12 total.
12 total.
Yeah. 9 plus 3 still equals 12, even with new math.
Well, I was thinking there was a 13th one. My bad.
All right. So with that, since you guys think that we're going to win 37 games this year, I got to imagine that you have like 10 or 11 true road wins, right, Jason?
11. Although, and I'll tell you something. I mean, other than in Chapel Hill and at Miami, I mean, are there any other games that are going to be even close? I don't. Yeah. So I'm too optimistic. I'm too optimistic.
I'm taking 9 because I see those two. I also see as possibilities any among Indiana, NC State, because we always seem to have trouble there, and Virginia Tech. All these teams seem to give us fits on the road. So I got 9 with Miami, UNC, and one other of those. Donald?
I have 10 true road wins.
Y'all are both wrong.
All right. All right. I'm trying to withhold my optimism this year hard. The next one, how many ACC teams are among the 16 that we now have in the conference are going to make the NCAA tournament? Donald, why don't you go first?
So I have 7 teams. I have Duke, UNC, Miami, Virginia, Louisville, Notre Dame, and Virginia Tech. I think those 7 make the NCAA tournament.
All right, Jason?
Did you say Virginia?
He did say Virginia.
I did say Virginia.
Well, I don't know who the 8th will be, but I think it will be 8.
Yeah, I'm with Jason. I don't know which among that kind of next tier it is, but I think one more sneaks in. So I got 8. Here's a category that I came up with that I'm excited about. How many Blue Devils are going to score 25 points in a game this year? I will go first. I think the number is 4, because I think it's the starters minus Trayvon Duval. Donald, do you agree with me?
I said 5. I said at one point every one of the expected starting 5 will score 25 points in a game.
And Jason?
I almost went 5, and then I thought about it some more, and I also went with 4. I think Duval won't quite get there. 25 is a lot of points.
Yeah, I tried to set a number that was going to be hard for basically anybody. I think that, like, I don't know, all of them are capable of it, but I could also envision scenarios where only Grayson Allen gets there, because and everybody still has stellar seasons. They just don't have that game. So I thought I was reaching for 4, but we shall see. All right.
So yeah. Wait. So I'll say this. So if we were talking about only games played after January 1st, like if we were lopping off all the sort of BS games against mediocre opponents, then the answer would be 1. I think it will only be Grayson Allen. Like once we hit ACC season, it'll only be Grayson Allen. But I think that they're gonna be games, some of these crazy teams we play that where the other guys are going to have big games.
I mean, I can see that being the case, right? Duke plays schools like South Dakota and Evansville and St. Francis, and all these games are in Cameron and
Furman.
You never know. Yeah.
No,
I agree with you. I actually think that it's not. that won't matter as much because like Trent, I feel like is going to score 25 points in a game, and it'll happen. Maybe it'll happen against a crummy ACC opponent, or it might happen against a good one, and he's just is having a night. But yeah, no, that is an interesting part of the calculus. All right, let's move to another interesting one for this year. I want you to rank the top 4 big men. So I'm counting Marvin Bagley, Marquise Bolden, Wendell Carter, and Javin DeLaurier as the top 4. Tell me in what order they will finish in total minutes, Donald.
I went with Bagley, Carter, DeLaurier, and Bolden.
Jason, did you have the same?
I had exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so did I. So there goes that category. I kind of threw this in because I was wanting to see if either of you was gonna pick either of the freshmen to end up with freshman jitters or foul trouble issues, and that wasn't the case. So who cares? This category is gone. Let's go next. Here's the next one.
Yeah, wait. You know what? It's really interesting that all 3 of us think DeLaurier is going to get more minutes than Bolden. Now, I think that mostly because I think DeLaurier is going to be capable of playing on the wing. Obviously more than Bolden can. And I think that I think Bolden's going to have trouble getting, Bolden must play center. And I think Wendell Carter's going to mostly play center. And I think it's going to be tough for Bolden to get minutes from Wendell Carter. I don't think there's going to be a lot of time that Duke plays Bolden and Carter together. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. And that's why I think DeLaurier, even though, Coach K has sort of referred to Bolden as his 6th starter and the such. And when you sort of contemplate who could be a starter, you consider Bolden before DeLaurier. I just think the opportunity is there for DeLaurier.
Yeah.
When
I put this question in there, I really wanted it to be how many minutes a game do we average the 3 big lineup. But I didn't have a good way to count it as we would have had to like update it every game. Which I'm sure we could do. It would be more cumbersome. So really, I'm interested in how many minutes a game do you think we're going to see 3 big lineup?
Yeah, well, I think with DeLaurier, the reason why I picked him to go 3rd is because I think he can pose cover in a lineup where you see foul trouble amongst our guards. Because he can play on the wing, because he can defend on the wing, I think he's going to see a little bit more time in the off chance that a Duval, Trent, or Allen gets into some foul trouble, and we want to go with a big lineup. I think he's going to be the option off the bench before Bolden.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to think about it, I think. Let's move to another to some other ones that are going to be harder for us to hit kind of right on the nose. But the next question is this is the Jason Evans special. How many total minutes is Jordan Goldwire going to play, Jason?
Okay, so I thought about this a long time.
So did I.
As did I.
Marquise Bolden played 157 minutes last year, even though he didn't appear in plenty of games. But he played 157 minutes. And I sort of think Jordan Goldwire, who I think will be our primary backup at point guard, even though Grayson Allen looked great playing point guard, when Trevon Duval was out. But I think Goldwire will get minutes as our backup point guard. I think Goldwire will play a little more than Bolden did last year. He's not going to play in every game, but I went with 160, just slightly more than Bolden played last season. And I think there will be a number of games where he plays 8+ minutes because it's a blowout.
All right. So give me your number again. Total
160.
All right, Donald, what's your Jordan Goldwire minutes prediction?
So I probably went bold with this. I was thinking about how many minutes do I expect him to play at the beginning of the season, and how many minutes a game I expect him to be in the mix for towards the end of the season, and kind of pick the average in the middle of that and multiply. Get a little bit of stick of that. But in the end, I think he's going to play a lot more than we're probably thinking he will. I think he's got, as the primary backup guard, I think he may see a lot more minutes than we're expecting. And so I went bold. I went 328 minutes. And I know that's a high number.
Whoa!
But
Oh my God!
I think that's where we're going.
So
wow. That's a huge number.
I told you.
For a guy who's he's not even a top 200 player. That's impressive.
Well, if we know that he's the eighth man on the team, kind of regardless of the recruiting ranking, if we know that he's the eighth man, seems like a logical pick. I actually went higher than Jason did, because I think there will be blowouts, and I also think that Coach K is going to come up with excuses to rest those other guys. So I went with 237 minutes. I thought I was going to end up on the lowest end here, but Jason outdid me. So that's kind of interesting.
Man. I hope I'm wrong. I suspect there are going to be a pretty fair number of games where he doesn't play at all. He may be the eighth man. I think there are going to be a fair number of games where he doesn't play at all. And I love the kid, and I think he's going to be way, way better than anyone even began to expect. And I think that when he plays, we will look at him and go, wow, he did admirably. He played good defense. He held on to the ball. Jordan Goldwire, absolutely can play point guard at this level. But I think I will say this: I revised my minutes down significantly after this latest exhibition game, after seeing how good Grayson Allen looked playing point guard.
So, one data point that I think is interesting to look at is Grayson Allen's production his freshman year, where he was kind of in a similar spot on the bench. He played 322 minutes that year. Now, I realize that there's a little bit of a weird circumstance because Rashid Suleiman was kicked off the team early in January, so that kind of changed the rotation a little bit. But 322 minutes for freshman Grayson Allen. Again, not necessarily the same recruiting level, but maybe the same spot in the rotation. Could be an interesting, and that'll be a fun one to watch now. All right, let's do another one of those. Alex O'Connell total minutes, who I would imagine is even lower on the rotation than Jordan Goldwire is. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to give him 73. Alex O'Connell, 73 minutes for the season.
I went with a much higher number than you. Last year, Antonio Vrankovic played about 100 minutes. And I think that there will be more blowouts this year than there were last year for Duke. And so I'm going 130 minutes for Alex O'Connell.
Okay. Donald?
I literally looked at, I did look at what people did last year as far as like the minutes of someone who's like a 9, 10, 11 off the bench range. I literally just said with 12 times 12. It's 144. So I will 144.
Okay.
Donald, I am pleased, Donald, that after being unable to do 9 plus 3 equals 12, that you were able to do 12 times 12 equals 144. I think
it's the number in the corner of the multiplication table, right? So it's an easy one to remember.
Easy.
Here's another one for guys down at the end of the bench. How many games will Justin Robinson appear in? I went with 9. Donald, what did you pick?
You read my script because I also have 9.
And Jason?
I'm going big on that. I'm going 14. Javin
14.
DeLaurier. Yeah, wait. Javin DeLaurier appeared in 12 games last year, and I think there will be more blowouts that will help Justin Robinson get time this year. So I'll go 14.
All right, and in honor of Donald's unbridled optimism about the 2016-2017 season, we're going to wrap with our final category. How many 100-point games is Duke going to have this year? Donald, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
10. Come on, 10.
I started with 10 to go with tradition, but in the end, I am going with 4. I think we'll get 4.
4 games, which is still a big number, as we discussed last year. Jason?
I also have 4. God, I'm so mad now. You know what?
All right.
I'm revising. Executive decision. I'm going with 3.
All right. I went with 2. We only had 1 last year. It's hard to score 100 points anymore.
Unless you're playing Bowie State.
Right, but we don't play Bowie State in the regular season. So So I'm going with 2. Okay, so that wraps up the prediction game for this year. We will post all the results of this. I'll remove the categories where we came up all with the same answers. There were a couple of those.
Well, you should post it anyway. Post it anyway.
We can still post it. We won't have
folks
to track
really
it
want. People really want to know.
Yeah,
right.
That's true. So that's the prediction game. We'll update at the end of the season as we've done the last few years. I hope that this year I can finally win one of these contests because I did come up with it. And what fun is coming up with a game if you can't win? But I think we're excited for the season. I think before we do parting shots and wrap, I want to ask each of you: is there something in particular that you're looking for from the team kind of here early in the season that we want to be watching out for, Donald?
That's a good question. I think the one thing that I'm looking for initially is to see how the freshmen respond on defense. That's usually where we run into issues in the early season. That's really where, a lot of times you get these quick timeouts by coach to yell at the team is because we're being lazy on defense. I want to see the energy carry over into the regular season because I think that's going to be very important for our momentum going forward, especially, with a big test against Michigan State and then at Indiana here in November. So I think that's what I'm looking for. Will the energy translate, especially in the form of defense, steals, block shots, altered shots? I want to see our freshmen really get after it in this first couple of games.
Jason?
So I'm going to be looking at one of the most important statistics in college basketball, which is how many three-pointers are you making? I think that as Duke begins to play teams that can closer match up with us in size, these exhibition games, obviously we were playing teams that couldn't match up with us size-wise at all. I think that as we play legit Division I teams, they're going to pack it in more and more and more against Duke. And I think that is going to require us to demonstrate that we can hit three-pointers. Against Bowie State, Gary Trent and Grayson Allen were the only guys in the team to hit a three-point shot. And we only hit 28% of our threes. Now, I mean, obviously this is a game where we scored 116 points. We didn't need to hit a lot of three-pointers, but I think one of the most important things for Duke is going to be our ability to force defenses away from the basket a little bit, which will give room for Wendell Carter, Marvin Bagley, Marquise Bolden, and others to operate in the lane. And I think that's going to be really, really, really important. Really important.
I think to build on that, the thing I'm looking for is offensive rebounding because, like you said, Duke only has really the two guys we're going to rely on for shooting. And if they want the three-pointer to be a significant part of the offense, the offensive rebounding has to be there to kick the ball back out to them to get second opportunities. So be it Carter or Bagley or Bolden, perhaps DeLaurier, I want to see those guys going up for offensive rebounds and getting them and turning them back into second chance, not just the putbacks, but the three-pointers as well. This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by Bird Campbell PA. We have another story from the Bird Campbell guys as they have generously provided along with their support of the show. So Jamie Campbell wanted us to pass along this story. He said that the single coolest experience for any Duke basketball nut is the Coach K Fantasy Basketball Academy. Without question, it should be at the top of every Duke bucket list. So his story from his first academy, he said that after 4 full days of full court competitive games, all played in Cameron, they came to the finals on Sunday morning. He could barely walk because his hamstring was so sore. He was actually worried about having permanent damage to that hamstring and knew that he had to go to work on Monday, but he was going to leave it all out on the court. So before the game, he walked over to his head coach, Chris Collins, who, as he says, is probably one of the nicest but most competitive guys you'll ever meet. And he says, Coach, if you don't mind, I don't think I can play this one. I can barely walk. And Coach Collins looks back at him with his intense stare and points to the Coach K logo on the floor and says rather loudly, with the expletives removed, this is Coach K court. Coach K is over there. This is his court. What do you mean you want to sit this one out? Are you bleeping crazy? So, needless to say, Jamie played the next game and survived, lived to tell the tale. But I think the lesson here is everybody should see if they can attend Coach K's fantasy camp that is taught by the players and by the coaches. And thanks again to Bird Campbell for the sponsorship this week and for many of the most recent episodes. All right, before we wrap up with parting shots, I know that Jason wanted to talk about some recruiting news that is hopefully coming to pipe this week. Duke has potentially a commitment coming from another top guy. And actually, Jason, you can go ahead and talk about him. And we can also mention that Duke got a commitment a couple of weeks ago from another 5-star recruit, and we totally overlooked it. So why don't you tell us about RJ Barrett first?
Sure. So this coming Friday, Canadian basketball prospect RJ Barrett, who some people consider the finest prospect to come out of Canada, perhaps ever, and I'm including
Andrew Wiggins.
Andrew Wiggins. I'm including Andrew Wiggins in that. Yes, people think RJ Barrett may be a better prospect than Andrew Wiggins. That's how good this kid is. RJ Barrett on Friday will announce his finalists are Duke, Kentucky, and Oregon. It's so sweet. It's so really nice that he included Oregon, a Nike school, and RJ Barrett is associated with Nike. And I think it's just, it's great that Oregon is in there, but no one on the planet thinks he's going to pick Oregon. He's either going to pick Duke or Kentucky, and almost all the experts say that this kid's going to pick Duke. He is the number one. He was the number one recruit in the class of 2019. He then reclassified to the class of 2018, and he is considered the number one recruit in the class of 2018. He's about 6'6" tall. He's a small forward, and this guy is one of the most dynamic playmakers with the ball in his hands that you will ever see at the high school level and next year at the college level. An unbelievable array of moves, ability to get off his shot. He is somewhat legendary because this past summer, now RJ Barrett is only 17, but he was playing on Canada's under-19 basketball team, the national team, the U19 team for Canada. And he was playing in the Basketball World Cup. And he was playing against Team USA. Canada played Team USA in the semifinals of the International Under-19 World Cup. And Canada beat the U.S. 99-87, and they basically beat the U.S. because RJ Barrett scored, wait for it, 38 points on Team USA. Now, there are guys who are currently on Duke. There are guys who are big-time recruits. Cameron Reddish, who's a big-time recruit for Duke, was trying to stop RJ Barrett in this game. He failed. All the best under-19 players in the U.S. failed to stop RJ Barrett. That's how dynamic this kid is with the ball in his hands. He can create his shot and get his shot as well as anyone around. He played on the Nike EYBL circuit this past year. The EYBL is the most significant, the biggest, high school AAU showcase. And RJ Barrett led the EYBL in scoring. He averaged 28 points per game. You know who the number 2 scorer on the EYBL was? Marvin Bagley, who averaged 25 points per game. So he was a bigger scorer than Marvin Bagley, even though he's a year younger. This kid is absolutely incredible. He's not a great three-point shooter yet, and that's part of what's terrifying about him. The pros, the NBA scouts look at him and they say, he's scoring like this. He's getting his shot, even though he only hit 31% of his threes on the Nike EYBL. In the World Championships, he only hit 24% of his threes. He's not a great three-point shooter, but they're like, it's clear. If you look at his stroke, if you look at his ability to score, he's going to become a great three-point shooter. And that's just terrifying. And everyone says that on Friday, this kid is going to pick Duke. I hope he does, because I don't want to play against him, because he's borderline unstoppable. He will be the first pick in the 2019 draft. And we're really looking forward to this. And this will just be the latest unbelievable, incredible recruiting coup by Coach K.
Donald, did you have anything to add about recruiting? I know that we have another player that we got a commitment from this week. If you wanted to talk about him a little bit.
Well, let me talk about RJ Barrett quickly,
Sure.
And then I'll kick it back to Jason. He is a world-class talent, very simply put. A lot of things that Jason said about him are true. He is dynamic, and when you watch him play, you realize that you're watching him play, and it's almost like he's the only player in the gym. That's the kind of player that he is. It's the kind of talent that he has, and I think it would be incredible get to land him on Friday, and hopefully that is the case.
Hopefully Barrett comes through for Duke. Jason seems optimistic about it. I guess the recruiting gurus feel the same way. I did want to note that Duke got a commitment last week or the week before. Last week. From
it happened right after we recorded.
It was right. Which is kind of why we missed it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't our fault.
It wasn't our fault. We didn't know he was committing. Joey Baker, who is a North Carolina kid. He's a small forward, and is ranked like in the low 20s in the composite rankings. So he's still a 5-star guy. He's still probably going to play next year, or in 2 years rather, when he matriculates, because he is a 5-star prospect. But it just goes to show you that Duke is so spoiled right now that the excitement over Joey Baker's commitment like barely registered on the DBR forum, even though he's a 5-star player and he's from North Carolina, which is a thing that people like to get themselves riled up about.
And by the way, the best thing about Joey Baker is that a month ago, before he visited Duke and got an official offer, he visited Duke on September 30th. That's when he got his official offer. He committed less than a month later on October 29th. Right prior to that, if you went back to the beginning of September before he visited Duke, everyone said that this kid was going to go to UNC. And then he came to Duke, he got an offer, and he said, nope, not going to be a Tar Heel. I'm going to be a Blue Devil. So I love Joey Baker.
Gotta love that. So good recruiting news last week for Duke. Hopefully that continues this week as well. So we'll wrap up the show here with parting shots. I'll start with Donald. What is your parting shot for this week?
I actually just forgot it. Can you do Jason first?
Well, that's a bummer. Jason, do you have one?
Yes. So my parting shot is these words: the book is not written. And by that, I mean, don't ever decide that someone is something or not something until they're all finished. And I'm talking about Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is in his 7th season in the NBA. And prior to season number 7 on the Boston Celtics, his first season with the Celtics, the book on Kyrie Irving was he's a great offensive player and a terrible defensive player. Folks, Kyrie Irving is rewriting the book. He has turned into a really, really good, not great, but a really good defensive player for the Boston Celtics. Kyrie Irving leads the NBA right now in steals. And I'm telling you, those are words I never thought I'd say. He's averaging 2.6 steals per game. He leads the league in steals. He has the fewest turnovers per game of his career. He's fouling less than he has. And he's still a dynamic scorer and playmaker. And he's doing all the things on offense, but he's added defense. Now, I'm not saying Kyrie Irving's the best defensive player in the league. I'm not saying Kyrie Irving's going to make first-team All-NBA defense. He's not there yet, but he's a heck of a lot closer than he was when he played for when he played for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And there are a lot of folks who thought he was making kind of a strange move when he pushed to leave Cleveland and leave LeBron James. There are a lot of people who thought that he was making a mistake and that Boston maybe gave up too much to get Kyrie Irving. And those folks are being silent right now because Kyrie Irving is a completely different player on the Celtics. And I also want to give a shout out to Brad Stevens, the coach of the Celtics, who continually finds a way to get the most out of his players, and he's getting the most out of Kyrie Irving. And the most out of Kyrie Irving is a special, special thing.
I like it. Donald, did you or actually before I throw it to Donald, I would add onto Jason's that we have we have seen examples of players, and there's, I think, one very prominent Duke player, JJ Redick, who came into the league kind of expecting, not to play much, might carve out a role as a little bit of a shooter, and he's been in the NBA now for 12 years and is still going strong, and has become, I think, kind of one of the best at what he does. And I don't know that anybody expected it to last that long for him, and especially during his first stint in Orlando when he was barely playing. Look at him now; he's like one of those smart veterans who still gets lots of minutes because he's still really good. So I think it's a great point made, Jason. Donald, did you remember your parting shot?
I did, but to piggyback on the on the Kyrie parting shot, I think the Cavs really miss him right now, because if you can tell, LeBron literally has to throw up 60 points for them to have a chance anymore, because they're not scared of the other guys on the team hurting them, and that's where Kyrie really made them very, very difficult to play against. So that'll be interesting to see as the game goes.
By the way, the Cleveland Cavaliers lost to the Atlanta Hawks tonight in Cleveland.
Oh.
And let me tell you something. The Hawks are terrible. I'm bummed that the Hawks won that game. I want the Hawks to lose as many games as possible. I want them to get a good draft pick. I want them to draft Marvin Bagley. But the Cavs, if the playoffs were today, the Cavs would not be in the playoffs. And let me tell you something. The Cavs could win a couple games in a row, and they still wouldn't be in the playoffs.
It'll be interesting to see. My parting shot that I forgot, it was really just to send a little love to my law school alma mater's football team, the University of Miami. They are 8-0 and are going for pretty much everything. They're right in the thick of things when it comes to the playoff with college football. They play Notre Dame this weekend, so I just wanted to send them a little love. Homecoming last weekend, they both beasted Virginia Tech 28-10. And next up is Notre Dame, and hopefully that's going to be one of those games where we take them to the woodshed and give them the beatdown that they deserve. So show some love to the U. Turnover chains in the building.
All right, so wait. So, hey, Donald, I can't believe this, because you are usually the man who does this. I thought for sure that your parting shot would be an obscure Duke athletic team succeeding, because you're usually the best about that. Did you see what the field hockey women did?
I did not. I was going to talk about the Duke women's soccer team, but they ended up losing in the title game. But I did not see what the field hockey team did. So tell us what happened.
The Duke field hockey team, the NCAA tournament seedings were just announced. They're the number 2 overall seed. I think who is it? I think UConn may be number 1. I forget who it was who's number 1, but Duke is the number 2 overall seed. They will host the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament in Durham. And congrats to the Duke field hockey team that number 2 seed overall. They're 16-3 on the season, and they're 7-1 at home. So you have to like their odds of advancing pretty far in the NCAA tournament.
And they've never won a national championship, I believe. So gunning for that first one for that program.
There you go.
Cool. Yep. I'm going to finish this week by also talking about football and just reiterating that I'm headed up to the Army Duke game this coming weekend. I know that football's a little bit fallen off the radar just because the team has not been playing as well the last month as they did the first month of the season, but I am excited to get up to West Point and check out the football scene there. And for those who are watching the game, the key that you'll hear harped on often is that Army doesn't pass; they only run the ball. So Duke's rush defense better be ready to go. And I hope we win. But regardless, I'm sure I'm going to have a good time. I do have a decent record for going to Duke football games, but we'll see how this one plays out.
We need a win. We definitely need a win.
Yeah, this is one we have to win if we have any shot of going back to a bowl game this year. So we'll see how that goes. If we win, maybe we'll get to talk about it more next week on the show. So before we wrap, just a reminder: we're going to have another episode coming out later this week to talk specifically about the basketball games that are coming this weekend, to come to you with an interview with another ACC coach who Jason caught up with recently, and so you'll be on the lookout for that. And then pretty soon it'll be the Champions Classic, only a little over a week away from right now. So happy basketball season, everybody! Get excited. We get to watch Duke basketball for real again, very, very soon. So this has been the 2017-2018 preview show for Duke Basketball Report podcast. For Donald Wine, for Jason Evans, I'm Sam Klein. Thanks for tuning in again. And just a reminder that we've got a couple new ventures sort of going on here. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and Google or Stitcher or SoundCloud, and make sure to leave us a review. If you don't like the show, feel free to email your complaints over to us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. You can also comment on the threads that we start in the forum at forums.dukebasketballreport.com. We always have a post in there dedicated to each episode of the show. And finally, if you want to sponsor a show, you can email us at that same address, dbrpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get you all the information for sponsoring the program. So once again, for Donald and Jason rather, I'm Sam Klein. Duke Band, take us home.